Welcome to the Empowered Team Podcast. I am your host, Kari Schneider, and today I'm going to give you the secrets to confidence. In fact, I'm calling this the confidence code. We're going to go through what's actually happening with confidence typically, and I'm going to give you the very steps, the very things that crack the code to not only finding confidence, but creating confidence whenever you need it. So let's go. Let's do this. All right. I bet if you look around in your life, there's somewhere where you feel like I've lost confidence in this zone. Maybe in the last week, month, year, but somewhere your confidence probably wavered, and it's typically called self-doubt. I'm not believing in myself. I've lost my self-confidence. Or I don't have confidence in this thing or this person. Yet that's all coming from within. So what do we do? How is this actually happening? Or you might have found you've got this overconfidence in something and then been really humbled by a situation. And that we're going to uncover too. I'm going to show you the spectrum of what's really happening when it comes to confidence on the scale of knowledge and competence, because we make stuff up in our heads and it affects our own confidence. And sometimes it creates overconfidence. Sometimes it creates underconfidence. That's why I'm going to give you the code, the 5 steps, not steps necessarily, but 5 elements that are required for you to be able to find confidence and create confidence. And have it as a sustainable way of being, a sustainable emotional state, a sustainable way of thinking. Then if these 5 elements are there, you've always got the thing you can lean on. You can see very clearly what you need to tap into in order to get going. All right. I know that there's been various times in my life where I've been overconfident. I try to stay in a zone of humble confidence. And that's the zone that for leaders, for anyone in parenting roles, or anywhere you really want to be successful in life, that humble confidence is the thing that really supports clarity. It supports great decision-making. It supports not succumbing to self-doubt. So it can be a really, really great place to have as a baseline, humble confidence. But we catch ourselves going into this overconfidence, or going into a zone, where we're losing our confidence. So what do we do when we're in that zone, and why does that even happen? So I'll share a story. This is a weed eating story, but it will apply to your business. It will apply to your family. It will apply to any area, because I'm sure you've seen this in your life before, where you come into a zone thinking that you know something because logically you can understand what's happened. But remember the 3 areas of mastery. The areas of mastery are intellectual mastery, emotional mastery, and physical mastery. But when we're in the zone of intellectual mastery, our brain will tell us that we know because we can understand what's going on, but it lures us into this false sense of confidence. And that's what we call being stranded on Mount Stupid. That is a nickname given for this Dunning-Kruger effect. These are psychologists who did this research back before 2000, right around 1999. And they found that people who are unskilled in a task often lack the self-awareness to recognize their own deficits. It's literally that we don't know what we don't know. But if we think we know something, then we can expect or think that we know more than we actually do. This is called being stranded on Mount Stupid. Now, none of us want to be stranded on Mount Stupid, so don't do this to yourself. Start to recognize it, and this is your first way to do so. I'm going to have you visualize a graph. And on the y-axis is confidence. So the higher it is on that graph, the more confident you are. And then on the x-axis, across the bottom, it's knowledge and competence. So the more you go along and get more knowledge and competence, what happens to the confidence? What happens is that in the low area of knowledge and the low area of competence, When we lack self-awareness, we often think we know way more than we do, and that's the peak of Mount Stupid. That is the Dunning-Kruger effect, where we're right on top of that Mount Stupid because we think we know everything when we don't have a lot of competence, we don't have a lot of knowledge in the area, and we're giving ourselves too much credit. So then if you picture this graph, and if you're listening on the podcast, I'm kind of making all these lines with my hands in the air. But you picture this graph going so high at the beginning and then dropping from the place of Mount Stupid, I know everything, and this graph is dropping. Where is it going? It's going into what's called the Valley of Despair. The Valley of Despair. What do we add? That's the zone where you realize I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. Now, I'm sure you can recognize this. It could be any task. It could be running your business. There could be so many things, hiring, firing, so many areas where you go from, oh, I know what I'm doing. I know everything. And boom, you're in the Valley of Despair and you're down into, I have no idea what I'm doing. But the great thing is that you've moved along the scale of knowledge and competence. The reason you went into that Valley of Despair is because you learned a little something, or you experienced something, or you realized how little you actually knew about that thing or had experience in that thing. So you're in the Valley of Despair, and then the curve starts to rise again. Not as steeply as it was, but the curve starts to come up, and this is called the slope of enlightenment. Ta-da! The slope of enlightenment is more in that zone of you're learning how much more there is than what you previously thought. You're learning how much more there is than what you've previously experienced or knew how to do. This is the slope of enlightenment. And the beautiful thing about this is it brings us to this beautiful valley, or let's call it a plateau. And this is where the graph kind of plateaus off and goes into more of a straight line. Now, we're not as high in confidence as we were when we were on Mount Stupid. This plateau is a little bit lower than that, but it's a whole lot higher than the Valley of Despair when we really don't know what we're doing. And what it yields in this plateau, it's a plateau of sustainability. This is where we've got real confidence. This is where we've got humble confidence. This is where we know what we know, and we know and understand what we don't know. And that's where real humble confidence lives. And that's the zone that we as leaders, as humans who really care about the world, care about other people, that's the zone that we want to be living in, that zone of humble confidence. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And there's a whole bunch of things that I don't know that I don't even realize. All right. So that right there is the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it is the concept of being stranded on Mount Stupid. And hopefully you get off of the beginning of that graph. You get off of Mount Stupid. But I hope you're seeing that in order to get off of Mount Stupid, you're probably going to have to go through some of that pain of figuring things out. Some of that pain of, I've got to learn something. I've got to experience something more than I have, instead of just being stranded on Mount Stupid and overconfidence of thinking I know everything. And really embracing, this is the embracing part, is kind of an embracing the suck, is that I have no idea how to do this, or I have no idea what I'm doing. And then this is what builds onto that slope of enlightenment is maybe I can figure it out. Maybe I can get help. Maybe I can borrow from another area that I do have confidence in. Oh, this is a little bit like that. And that can bring you to the plateau of sustainability. All right, so here's the real question. How on earth do you get through that Valley of Despair into the slope of enlightenment, into this sustainable, humble confidence? How do we get into that zone? That's really where we like to skip over because it's not the funnest part to be in. So let me go into what that looks like. So here we go. This is where, in all the research that I looked at, in all the experience that I've had coaching thousands and thousands of people over 25 years, I look at this and I go, what does it really look like to get into that zone of humble confidence. We'd like to think that, well, I'm just going to be a humble person and I'm going to be a confident person. But to get through that valley of despair and slope of enlightenment, it takes some sort of experience. It takes some sort of realization about our own ability or inability, our own knowledge or lack of knowledge, or we've actually gone through an experience that had us struggle and really learn and realize that, okay, I've got to grow more of myself in order to get to this next zone. So this is a framework. These are the elements I'm going to walk you through on this confidence code. These are not necessarily in any order, and I want that to be an important point because you are going to need to draw from confidence in different elements. You're going to need to be able to tap into one of these things at any given time. I'm going to give you a little example here before I go into this framework, these elements, because it happens to all of us and we don't expect it. I think as achievers, as leaders, I think we like to show up in serving other people. I think we like to show up with purpose. And sometimes we can be really misled in our intentions, even though we have good intentions. I think of a time, and this is just such a ridiculous example, but you can put this example into business, you can put it into relationships, you can put it into friendships, anywhere you want. And I think of this time where there is, around the zone that I'm in, I'm at Wycliffe Lodge doing the renovations still, but there's just plain old maintenance that needs to be done. And I've taken a lot of that on, whether it's mowing, whether it's cleaning up, whether it's making sure things are organized. There's just a number of things that need to be done on any given time. And we have a weed eater. And this weed eater is a motorized weed eater, and it has a strap to it. And anytime I would go to use it, it would either not start, even though it would start sometimes and not other times, or when I was using it, it was so big and clunky that the strap wasn't the right size and it was just too big for me to be able to use. So I would default to any help I could get on this area. And I would default to, we had a neighbor, just a wonderful human who would do this without asking until we just couldn't believe how amazing he was at almost reading people's minds and what was needed. And he'd just go out and do it because he took responsibility for the whole neighborhood instead of his own property. And he'd come around and weed eat these areas that were just way overgrown. We never would have touched with a lawnmower. We probably wouldn't have bothered weed eating, and he would come along and just weed eat all this area. Well, as he got older, he couldn't do as much. And we realized that, oh my gosh, he was really serving us in so many ways. And I wanted to, this is a me thing, I wanted to still have that same level of yard maintenance. And it's a large area. And so Paul was better at the weed eating than I was. His size, being double my size, was just plain more convenient. And he was better at it than I was. So he'd go out to weed eat, but then I'd get kind of anxious on, well, that area has to be done and that area has to be done. And he would go and do his best and get out there and start weed eating and then go into areas that I didn't care about as much. And so I'd redirect him into another area. Or he might be in a zone and then he would be missing certain chunks. And I'd be sitting there going, well, wait, you missed that area over there and that area over there. And he probably didn't feel very appreciated at the time. And I was kind of frustrated because I didn't know why he didn't plan out where to weed eat or why we didn't have that clear in the beginning. And at the end of it, he might have come out of it feeling like, okay, you're not appreciating this work that I put in. And I might have come out of it feeling, hey, this could have been easier on both of us had we just made a plan instead of, you assuming or me having to come or coming back to me to ask what was next. And it was hard on both of us. But then down the road, when he there were lots of times where it needed to be maintained and he wasn't here. And so I couldn't manage that particular weed eater. And I went out and got a battery one because I figured, well, I guess I got to do this. The neighbor can't help. I don't have the consistency of the employee. I'm putting him and the other one on cleaning more if I only have so many hours with them. So I'm going to go out and do this weed eating. I'm confident in it. I can do this. I've done it before. I did it in high school a bit. I've mowed so many hours I can't even count. So away I went with if you recognize, I'm on the top of Mount Stupid. I'm stranded on Mount Stupid. I'm so stranded on Mount Stupid because I know everything. I can't even see what I don't know. So the first year that I went out to do this, I went and started going, and that's when I discovered that the one weed eater was too big for me. So what did I do? I went to my neighbor. He lent me his other one, which was far easier to manage. He had me use that one, and it was great. And away I went. But it had me learn immediately that I can't use this big mower or this big weed eater. And so I went and bought the smaller one and the electric one. Well, then my neighbor wasn't able to help. He actually passed away. And it was an awful loss to the whole community neighborhood. And I thought about him every time I went to weed eat because he was so helpful in so many ways and just even helping me get started on borrowing his weed eater. So away I went with the weed eater, and now I've got a new one. It's lighter. I can manage it more, and off I go. And I'm into it about an hour, and I realize, I'm not only zoning out in certain areas because I've got a micro focus. I leave the area to go to another area, not only to look back and see that I missed an entire patch, because when you're focused on the one spot, it's such a micro focus that you don't see the bigger picture, and then have to go back and do that. And then the weed eating line is all tangled up, and I got to refeed that and figure out how to take it apart and put it back in and respool it. And do I need more stuff? Have I run out of it? There were so many things that I was tackling on this. I ate a huge, not bite of humble pie, but a huge amount of humble pie. I went through the valley of despair so many times in the thing either not starting, not working, being too big, tangling the line, all of the things that went on, needing to ask for help. That was the valley of despair. Over and over again, understanding that, wow, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I wasn't even humble enough to appreciate what someone else was doing. And now I'm in the very things that I might have thought was ridiculous that they were doing, and I'm doing the exact same things because I'm in it. And that was a big bite of valley of despair, big bite of humble pie, and then coming up the slope of enlightenment going, wow, okay, this is how this has to happen. This is what actually has to be done. Now, apply this to your businesses. Apply this to your life. Where has it been where you've looked around and gone, oh, I know exactly how to do this, and it's so easy to tell somebody else how to hire, tell somebody else how to fire. But until you've been through it a whole bunch of times, guess what? You really don't know how hard it is. Onboarding employees, selling a business, starting a business. We can have all of that overconfidence in the world, be all up there stranded on Mount Stupid, but when push comes to shove, it's actually doing it. It's actually going through the hard times that has us grow, that has us figure it out, has us have the real confidence that's sustainable, that teaches us that we can do what we want to do. We can do what it takes. Why? Because we've learned more. We've become more capable. We've had more experience. But what do you do if you haven't had that experience and you still need the confidence? This is what self-confidence is. Self-confidence is that understanding that I'm capable of figuring it out. I'm capable of going through the hard things. I'm capable of facing what needs to be faced and learning what needs to be learned in order to really, truly understand. And I'm capable of looking at myself and understanding that I may think I know exactly what's going on, but I'm likely missing a whole bunch and I just don't know exactly what's going on. I'm going to have to figure it out and learn a lot along the way. That's where we draw self-confidence, is knowing that we can learn, knowing that we can figure it out, knowing that we have the courage to face what we don't know and face what's different than what we thought it was. That's where confidence, self-confidence is developed. And that's what really fights against the self-doubt. Because the self-doubt in business, the self-doubt in life, it can become all-consuming. And we don't want that. That's not who you are. You're up to so many amazing things and serving so many amazing people that if the self-doubt takes over, it's not going to serve anybody, let alone yourself, let alone those you really care about. So this is what is required for you to really, really go into the plateau of sustainability, which is the beautiful place of understanding your own confidence and having that humble confidence at any given time. It sounds like this. The first one I'm going to tell you is honoring your word to yourself. This is also known as integrity. Honoring your word to other people, honoring your word to yourself, but specifically this one is self-integrity. Why? Because it is the foundation to breed self-trust. If you don't have self-trust, if you've been letting yourself down, not having your own back over and over again, you don't trust your own word to yourself. There's no way you're going to have confidence or be able to build self-confidence in an environment where you don't honor your word to yourself. That's one of the most important foundational parts of confidence. So start there. It sounds like a crazy thing because we're so lured into showing up for other people, doing what they want, but it really starts with our integrity with ourselves. Self-integrity breeds self-trust. Self-trust is what's required for self-confidence. Otherwise, the self-doubt will always creep in. And I know this sounds so much easier than it is. It's so much easier than it is. An example in that weed eating story that I gave, an example of that would be, I guess I better honor my word to myself in reminding myself that caring about the person comes first before the task. I know that I believe fundamentally, then I better have my own self-integrity by acting accordingly. By caring about the person first over the task, the person first over my opinion, which may not even be right. That is a big deal. Facing that is a big deal. That level of self-awareness helps yourself go, okay, now I can start to trust on me. Because not only can I see it, but now seeing it, facing that, exploring it, having integrity with myself, honoring my word to myself, that's a big deal. It's the biggest deal because it's going to let you consciously honor your word to other people. You know that when you say something to them, you'll be able to follow through. How will you know? Because you've been able to have your own back. You've been able to do it for yourself. So that is the first one I'm explaining to you is the honoring your word to yourself. This is your confidence code. Here we go. Next one. The second one is doing your best and being able to persevere. Now, doing your best, this is definitely one of my top values, and trying hard is really up there for me as well, and that perseverance. This grows confidence, and the way it does is that when you have to try your best when it's hard and it's not easy, that's where confidence grows. Confidence grows in the challenge. Sometimes even the struggle, not the ease. Confidence grows in stretching yourself to an ability that you didn't know you had. And in order to find that ability you didn't know you had, you're going to have to try your best. Staying in the comfort zone isn't where it's at. Persevering through something where, I made an effort, now I'm going to back off. No, actually giving it your all, trying your best, putting your best foot forward, that is hard to do in all kinds of circumstances. Business, family, life, your own personal struggles. It is not easy to keep putting that foot forward and your best foot forward. But that challenge, the discomfort, the struggle sometimes that it is, that's where confidence grows. That's where confidence grows. It's not growing where you're sitting. It's not growing where it's easy. That is not what perpetuates any form of confidence or self-confidence, or creates any form of it. So the second element that I'm explaining here is doing your best. I know it's so hard to do when things are hard, and that's where your confidence will grow the most. I promise. I promise. I promise. Next one. This one, I think, is the one that most people know the best, and we all can lean on the best, and it's preparing. Preparing well. If you prepare for the test, you prepare for the presentation, the pitch, the new business, do your due diligence, that breeds confidence. It quiets self-doubt. Preparing. It's a simple thing, and when we don't do it, the self-doubt naturally creeps in. Why? Because that's what our brains are designed to do. If you recall last month when I spoke about the motivational triad, our brains are designed to stay comfortable and avoid pain and seek pleasure. So if we're going to do that most of the time, there's going to be lots of times we're simply not going to prepare because we're busy staying comfortable, avoiding anything that requires a little extra work. But when we condition ourselves, remind ourselves of our value and our values, then what happens? We go forward and we prepare, and it quiets any of that self-doubt. Our brain, that self-doubt, is designed to look for the negative. The self-doubt comes from looking at the negative. So know that the self-doubt will come. Don't make it wrong that it comes in and creeps in. Your brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Congratulations, you have a healthy brain. It's looking for the negative. It's going to create self-doubt. That's its way of keeping you safe. Congratulations, your brain works. It's awesome. Now, prepare, because that will quiet the self-doubt and keep you focused on what you really want. And I'm pretty sure what you really want isn't just thinking negatively or perpetuating self-doubt. So that's the third one that I want to share. Here's the fourth one. And this one is one I don't think most people would think of when it comes to not only finding confidence, but creating confidence. And it's this. It's serving others. Serving others is this way of creating confidence via contribution. When you serve others, you can't help but witness your own impact on other people. That in and of itself, you can't help but see that you matter to others. Your behavior impacts others. When you serve and contribute, it's a feedback loop of seeing how much you are important. If that doesn't help your confidence, I don't know what will. Contribute, serve others, make the effort, put that best foot forward in a way that makes a difference for other people. When you can do that, that will help confidence in any day. If you're struggling, go ahead and help somebody else. Get the focus off yourself, off of the negativity, off of the own self-doubt. Focus on someone else, and you'll see really quickly. You'll see how your world is so important. Your impact is so important. And that, for most people, will create, will generate, will remind you of what's in there. And that confidence comes from that. Next one and last one. This is the one that helps create the humility. It helps create the humble confidence. And what it is this learning from others. Humble confidence requires feedback. It's a feedback loop. Tell me more. What was it about what I did that helped? What was it about what I did that didn't help? Tell me more about that. It requires a level of interest in your own self-awareness, humility, and genuine understanding and interest about someone else. You want to know what their feedback is. That learning from someone else is so important to understand yourself, but also make sure that you're not stranded on Mount Stupid. You're genuinely looking to learn. You're adding to your own experience, adding to your own knowledge, adding to your own capability. And as that develops, that's where you can face the hard parts of the valley of despair. You can go up through that slope of enlightenment and you find that sustainable confidence, that zone where you go, but it requires the feedback from others. Being open to that. That's the important part. So my wish for you in this is to not just be in sustained confidence, not just to have confidence all the time. My wish rather is that you have the openness to understand that you're going to go through this valley, this graph, this experience of being stranded on a zone that is overconfident, that says, oh, I know what to do. I know it all. If you can be open to the fact that that's going to happen to you in some zone, then that's going to help you really develop the real confidence that comes from true knowledge, learning from others, being humble, actually serving others, showing up as your best, honoring your word to yourself, and really preparing in all the ways that can support you. That's my wish for you, is that you can have the openness to see that you're going to go through that same cycle as all of us do to create real confidence. All right, those 5 elements again were honoring your word to yourself, really using that for your own self-integrity, breeding your own self-trust. The next one is doing your best and persevering. Your confidence grows. It's nourished by challenge. Not ease, not the safety, not the comfort. Preparing well. Make sure you prepare. It quiets that negative mind. It quiets the self-doubt that's naturally going to come up. Serving others. This is contribution. Confidence comes through contribution. Easily. And lastly, learning from others. That feedback loop fuels humble confidence, has you understand your own self-awareness, helps you through the struggling time because you're actually facing what it is that you can learn, what it is you can grow and become more capable at. Those are the 5 elements. Those are the confidence code. Now, I'm going to add one last thing. This is like the bonus, and I call it cross-confidence. Cross-confidence is borrowing confidence from another area of your life where you are really confident, where you know you've done the work, where you know you've learned it, you've earned it, you understand it, and you know what you don't know because you've learned so much, you have a really good understanding of what you don't know in this area. That is what I call cross-confidence. So that's your extra bonus one that goes, all right, I can garner that self-confidence. Why? Because I've got tons of confidence, real humble confidence from experience in this zone over here. And I'm going to borrow some of those traits. I'm going to borrow some of those skill sets to help me in this zone over here where I just don't have as much confidence. So that cross-confidence can be a thing that's always in your back pocket. Always in your back pocket. Yes, you're going to have that confidence code at any given time, but sometimes when you're tapping into that confidence code, you're doing so because you're in a zone that's new and you don't know what to do, and it's really hard. So by all means, in your back pocket, you've always got that other zone that you're really confident in. True confidence, sustainable confidence, the one that you've done the work. You've got that right there. All right, on that note, I'm sure there's somebody in your world who is looking for a confidence boost. Send this over to them. Give them a little share. Give them a little shout out. I appreciate you. Keep being empowered. Have an incredible rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week.